Okay, so these are a couple of the Haiboxing. There's the manufacturer's name right there. Haiboxing. This is the 18859e truck that you can find on Amazon. These run about $70, $65 to $70, give or take, depending on who you find that's the seller. I have one that's been modified, one that's not been modified. I spent some extensive research and time, probably way too much time considering what these are. Researching the 118 scales, looking for something for me and my son to run in the backyard to build a small track because we don't have the space to do the larger cars. Plus, the larger cars are a lot more expensive. We were looking to try to get into this hobby for $100 each or whatever. So I spent, after a lot of time looking at the different ones, I narrowed it down to 2 cars. I narrowed it down to this one, and then there's another one which I don't have here, but that would be the 979 by WL Toys. There's an A979 or a 9 series, and there's an A and a B. The B has the bigger motor. Too fast, I think, for a kid starting out. What's nice about this one is with the remote here, you can see on the top that there is a slow or normal speed. So for kids that don't have, or anybody who's run an RC car that's a beginner, it tones the car down quite a bit, makes it a lot easier to drive. The second thing is the type of dirt we have. We have some even though I'm in Georgia, we have some clay, but we also have a lot of black dirt, a lot of composted dirt. So the cars can be squirrely, and that was the second issue I was trying to solve. So once again, being a mountain biker and been into dirt sports of all kinds, understanding how suspension works, tow and camber and all that, I did a few things to these vehicles, to this vehicle, which this one's stock. You'll be able to see the difference here. There's 2 upgrades that are worth noting. One is not listed as an upgrade, but I'll show you what it is, and that is this part number here. It's actually these little guys. These are the servo push rods, as you can see here. But this push rod is actually about the same size as this one, which is solid and non-adjustable. When these cars come, a lot of the bigger vehicles, you may actually want a little bit of tow out. As you can probably see, this truck does have a little bit of tow out. I'd say probably about 2 degrees on each side, something like that. The rear is towed in, as it should be on a dirt car. You can look some of this stuff up online. When you get into these really, really small scale cars, every obstacle you hit is magnified because the car is so small. So what seems small and insignificant to you is actually, a pretty large bump or whatever to these vehicles. Also, something else to note is that everything happens really, really fast. It's a short wheelbase. When it gets sideways quickly. These cars don't weigh much. They're very much affected by the terrain. So the two things I wanted to fix was the handling and the suspension, which also contributes to the handling. As you can see with the stock suspension, that car bounces, and it bounces up and down before it settles, or it makes 3 cycles before it finally settles. And I'm only dropping it about 3 or 4 inches, so you can see that front end almost even bounces up a little bit. Versus this car that has been modified, that has the shocks that come from the manufacturer. Once again, you can find these on Amazon. There's the part number right there. These are $18, $20. They're not real expensive. They come oil filled, they are aluminum, and they do have an adjuster ring, so you can actually do a lot of setup on these if you want to. I found that this thing actually drives great now, just set up pretty much stock, and then I'm mounting them into the furthest points out on both front and rear. The stock, the front ones come on the inside to give it a little bit more spring. This makes the suspension a little bit softer, a little bit supple, but if you notice, this car does not bounce at all. I mean, I'm dropping it from over a foot and it pretty much just stops. Done. You can also see that I have changed out the tie rods for the steering. And if you look at this car, I now have about 1 to 1.5 degree of toe in. I ran both cars outside, and this one is 40% easier to control now. It's unbelievable the difference that made. First of all, the car isn't bouncing all over as it's driving just from the little things on the track, but also when it does go into steer and when I'm dealing with power sliding it around a corner, it has a lot more control. Everything now on this car seems to handle, much better. It's much improved. At high speed on the asphalt, also the toe in, high speed straightaway, holding the car straight is a lot easier. And I was also able to adjust out the fact that under power, it would kind of want to pull, then you let off and it would stop. So by being able to adjust the toe on each side, I've now been able to settle that out. And it was really simple. It wasn't much turns. But now under throttle or off throttle, the car handles and runs a straight line pretty much the way I want it. Obviously, little bits of things on the street can make it just quickly dart left and right. But for the most part, it holds a line. It's very true. It's a whole different experience now driving this little car. For the money, it's really hard to beat. So you're looking at a, worst case $70 car, $18 pair of shocks, and then these little guys I think were like $3 or $5. So you're under $100 for something that performs well beyond its means or its price range, reasonably fast, great for bashing around the backyard, anywhere you've got dirt. It handles pretty well now, so it's definitely an upgrade worth doing. Again, I'll show you the two just so you can kind of see the difference. Even just dropping the rear, you can see how much difference there is in the settling. But that is definitely, versus that, you can totally see the difference. So I would recommend, if you're going to modify one of these or you're going to purchase one of these, immediately order these parts for the steering and also for the shocks, and you're going to have an amazing little vehicle.